Let me tell you about a shift that humbled me more than any other moment in my 10 years of retail leadership. This is not a blow up, not a termination, not a corporate visit that went sideways. A Tuesday afternoon, ordinary floor, ordinary team, and ordinary shift. This showed me everything I was doing wrong as a communicator. I had just come off a district meeting full of initiatives, new priorities, new language corporate wanted us to embed in our daily interactions with our customers and team members. And I walked onto my floor fired up. I gathered my team for a pre-huddle and I gave them everything. The new customer service approach, the updated sales techniques, the revised floor coverage expectations, the new accountability language around tardiness, the performance metrics changing at the end of the quarter, the team culture shift corporate wanted to see reflected in our daily interactions. I gave them all of it in one huddle in about 7 minutes. And I walked away feeling like I did my job, informed my team, communicated the expectations, set the tone of the shift. 2 hours later, I was on the floor and watched a team member handle a customer interaction the exact same way they had been handling it for 6 months. Nothing I had just communicated had landed, not because they were not listening, because I had given them so much to process that their brain did the only rational thing it could do with 7 minutes of unorganized information delivered at one speed. It let most of it go, and I realized standing on that floor watching that interaction that I had not communicated anything. I had transferred information, and those are not the same thing. I went home that night and thought about every huddle I had run that month, every expectation I had set, every standard I had communicated, and I asked myself one honest question. If I pulled a team member aside right now and asked them the single most important thing I needed from them this week, would they even know the answer? And I already knew they would not, because I had never told them one thing. I had told them everything, and everything with no hierarchy is the same as nothing. Now, over the 10 years on a retail floor, and the hardest skill I had unlearned was the one I thought I was already good at, communication. Because I was a talker, I was articulate, I could run a meeting, deliver feedback, and hold a hard conversation without losing my composure. And I thought that meant I was a strong communicator. But being able to talk and being able to communicate are two completely different things. One transfers information, the other changes behavior. And for years, I was doing one while I was believing I was doing the other, until a Tuesday afternoon on an ordinary floor showed me exactly the gap between the two. It's about how clearly one thing lands, because here is what is happening on your floor every time you overcommunicate without prioritizing. Your team is doing what every human brain does when it receives more input than it can organize. It ranks it, and the ranking has nothing to do with what you think is most important. It has everything to do with what feels immediate, most relevant, and most connected to something they already care about. Which means the initiative corporate handed you yesterday is sitting at the bottom of the ranking right now, below the personal situation your team member is navigating, below the interaction they just had with a difficult customer, below the scheduling conflict they are thinking about for next week. Not because your team does not care, because you gave them a reason to rank your priority above their own. And that is a communication problem, not a people problem. Here is what changes when you fix it. You stop running huddles that cover everything and start running huddles that drive one thing, one expectation, one behavior, one standard, delivered clearly, connected to something your team already cares about, followed up on before the end of the shift. That is it. Not 7 minutes of corporate language dumped into teams that already thinking about the floor they are about to walk onto. One thing. Communicate it clearly, reinforce consistently until it becomes behavior you no longer have to ask for. Because the managers whose teams operate at a consistently high level are not communicating more than you are. They are communicating better. They have learned how to take the one thing that matters most right now and deliver it in a way that gives their team member a reason to care about it before they ask them to execute it. They connect the expectation to the outcome, the standard to the result, and the behavior to the identity of the kind of team member their people are trying to become. That is not a communication style. That is communication system. And without it, you will keep running huddles that feel productive and watching floors that do not reflect any of it. Because the information without clarity is just noise, and your team has been living inside the noise for longer than either of you realize. Your floor does not need more information. It needs one clear direction delivered by a leader who knows exactly what matters most right now. That is communication that changes behavior. That is communication that builds trust. And that is the communication that makes your team feel led instead of managed. And it starts the moment you decide that clarity is not just a leadership tool. It is the most powerful one. If you have ever walked off a shift wondering why nothing you communicated ever stuck, I need you to try something before your next huddle. Write down every single thing you want to communicate to your team, and then cross out everything except the one thing that matters most right now. Lead with that one thing, connect it to something your team already cares about. Follow up on it before the shift ends and watch what happens to your floor. Not because your team suddenly got better, because your communication finally did. The disciplined leader system was built on this exact foundation: clear communication, zero ambiguity, one direction at a deliberate time in a way that builds behavior before it measures it. Because you cannot retain what you never developed. And right now, your team is waiting for a leader who can tell them exactly what matters, exactly what's expected of them. Grab the disciplined leader. My link is in the bio. Drop a yes in the comments if you have ever run a huddle and watched nothing from it show up on the floor afterwards. Because that comment section is about to tell you everything about how many retail managers are leading inside the noise right now. Follow. This is the work.